All right. We can go ahead and get started with Caitlin. I'll be keeping time today and also managing any Q&A. Um, if you see me waving my hands or anything like that, just you'll know you're coming to the end of your time. Um, and any participants who would like to ask questions should feel free to do so. You can put them in the chat or the Q&A area, and we will do our best to manage those either as we go along or at the end. All right, so Caitlin, go ahead and take it away. Can I get you to unmute, please?
That would be helpful. Are you seeing the correct view? Are you seeing? Okay, awesome. All right. Well, thank you for having me today to share our organizational story. My name is Caitlin Karolenko. I'm a scientific program manager at the Institute for the Advancement of Food and Nutrition Sciences. Today, it's my pleasure to talk about the implementation of open science from the perspective of a funder to both advance transparency and collaboration in the food and nutrition space. There we go. So I want to start by providing some background on who we are as an organization. The Institute for the Advancement of Food and Nutrition Science, more affectionately called IFANS, is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that engages scientists from academia, government, and industry to advance food safety and nutrition science in support of public health. We do this by funding external researchers and convening experts to catalyze the creation of scientific knowledge. Our collaborative and inclusive structure allows members to bring forward diverse perspective from across the entire food and beverage ecosystem. So at IFANS, we do live by our core values. This includes scientific integrity, transparency, collaboration, and public benefit. We do value scientific integrity above all else and are committed to transparency. This does include full disclosure of our funding model and making sure that the research we support is publicly available to the scientific community. We do believe that engaging scientists from all three sectors, industry, government, and academia, allows everyone to see at the table and does make the research stronger. So for today's talk, I really do want to focus on two of our core values, transparency and collaboration. IFANS has adopted open science practices that not only influence how we fund research, but also makes opportunities more accessible to all. So by implementing some of these practices I'll talk today, I can show how we're using open science to enhance transparency of our work and facilitate valuable collaborations that allows us to achieve our organizational mission. So starting with the transparency side, so to take a more transparent approach to funding food and nutrition research, we've implemented a few strategies. They include implementing open science practices like registration and open access publishing practices. We've also developed our own guiding principles and guidelines for funding food and nutrition research. And we've also achieved external accreditation of transparency with the GuideStar Seal of Transparency. So I'll get into a little bit more detail on those here. So I mentioned the registration of projects. So IFANS supported research projects are registered on the Open Science Framework at the start of the project. This is a publicly available database which increases the visibility and the rigor of the research that we fund. And really allows for the scientific community to see more readily what we're funding. We also adhere to the transparency and open promotion guidelines or TOP guidelines. IFANS is a signatory of these TOP guidelines. They provide actionable steps to practice and promote transparent and rigorous research. So as a signatory, we do require the implementation of these guidelines with our funded researchers. And lastly, we do have an open access publishing requirement. So any work that is funded through IFANS, we do require to be open access. The investigator is free to choose any journal that they want to publish in, and we will pay for that open access publication fee to meet this requirement. Also talked about developing our own funding guidelines. So there's limited funds from federal agencies, so non-federal and non-governmental sources, including industry, do play a key role in offering new opportunities for innovation within the food and nutrition space. Obviously, that can present a sort of bias in the paper. So these guiding principles that were developed by IFANS serve as a tool for funding agencies that they can use to protect the integrity and the credibility of the scientific record from that funding source. These guiding principles were unveiled for the first time at the 7th World Conference on Research Integrity, and they've also been published in the American Society Journal of Nutrition. So these guiding principles are an initiative that we're particularly proud of, and we do require our investigators to adhere to these principles for IFIN's funded work. I won't read all 9 principles to you. I can obviously provide a link to the publication, but I do want to touch on a few and highlight a few of the principles. So for example, the control of the study design, the research, and the implementation of the findings are all rely with the investigator. We don't have any hand in that or any say in that. We do require that in publications and in conference presentations, there's a full disclosure of financial and non-financial conflicts of interest. As I mentioned, the investigator has a freedom to choose the journal for publication. And we do encourage the practice of open science through the accessibility of the data and the analysis by the investigator. So in total, there's 9 principles that provide a conflict of interest guideline to protect the credibility of the scientific record, and they really strengthen that guardrail that separate the funding from the science. And really, they reflect the overall shift that we're seeing in the scientific community towards increased transparency and open science, which is why we're all here today. I mentioned we did achieve a GuideStar seal of transparency. So for a bit of background, GuideStar provides these transparency seals. They are the world's largest source of information on nonprofit organizations. So we provide our organizational programs, our goals, our capabilities, and our financials so we can achieve this highest level of accreditation, demonstrating our commitment to transparency of our operating model. So I've touched on a lot of the transparency initiatives, and I want to flip to the other side of that coin that I mentioned and talk about an emphasis on fostering collaborations. So we do have a few ongoing initiatives that provide new opportunities for a wider participation and include the next generation of scientists. So I want to really highlight that power of collaboration to deliver impactful science. So the between the IFINS committees last year, we had 21 peer-reviewed publications that were completed. This comes from 91 unique authors with 49 different affiliations. And I want to highlight this was done with a budget of $1.2 million. So we're quite proud that we're able to catalyze that amount of scientific knowledge, utilizing a diverse group of people with, quite frankly, not a lot of money. Also in 2023, we did support 34 events, both webinar and in person, with 148 unique presenters from 108 different organizations. I'll note that about more than 95% of our in-person and virtual events are free. And then for those that are paid, we do provide a reduced cost for students. We feel that making this conscious effort to make our events free really reduces the barrier to access the science that we're providing and provides more opportunity for more to participate. We also prioritize the next generation of food and nutrition scientists and increase engagement among underrepresented groups. We do host a Summer Research Opportunity Fellowship. This is a paid part-time remote opportunity that allows grad students to work on a project that supports the advancement of food and nutrition science. We also connect them with scientists within academia, industry, and government to expand their network as they move forward in their career. We do prioritize underrepresented students to participate in this, and we do feel very strongly about this opportunity being remote. We are based in DC. It's an expensive town to live in. So if we can find or provide an opportunity for students to expand their work at their home institution without requiring a costly short-term move during the summer, really does decrease some of the barriers to participate. Also, the remote aspect requires or allows for more flexibility for the student to work on their project with minimal interference to their ongoing graduate work. The application is still open for this year. So if you are interested or know a student that would be interested, feel free to take a look at our website or reach out to me for more information. I'm happy to provide that. And lastly, during our requests for proposals, we do conduct outreach to HBCUs, minority serving institutions, and tribal colleges to make our funding opportunities more accessible. We feel that a more diverse group of people that we can reach results in more diverse ideas to solve our most pressing challenges in food and nutrition safety. So we recognize that this is a continuing process. These are initial steps that we have taken as a funder, and there's always more that can be done. At IFINS, we look to our Assembly on Scientific Integrity to continue work to support projects that promote the highest level of scientific integrity and hope to promote the others to do the same. The Assembly is made up of people from all 3 areas of our membership. This includes our Board of Trustees, our Scientific Leadership Council, and members from government, industry, and academia. This work is always ongoing, it's evolving, but it is a priority at IFINS. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. I hope this has helped provide some information on how we're utilizing open science practices as a funder to both foster collaborations and increase transparency in the work that we're funding within the food and nutrition space. My contact information is listed on here, and I do encourage you to check out our IFINS webpage or our LinkedIn page for more information on the work that we're currently funding and upcoming projects. And I'm happy to take any questions if there's time.
Thank you very much, Caitlin. There is a question about whether the open access mandate that you have extends to data availability. And if so, do you provide or suggest a repository and data standards?
Sure. So we are encouraging it right now. There's no formal requirement. We are moving in 2024 to a formal requirement for posting data that we fund. We haven't finalized where that repository is going to be, but happy to provide that as we develop that process more.
Very good. And I will suggest for attendees, you can continue to enter questions at the chat or in the Q&A, and we will address those as we go. We have time for one more question. There's one from Michael. He says, I might have missed this, but can you comment on the funding for increasing underrepresented groups and internship opportunities? So I think you talked about your summer internship at the end, but are there other kinds of programs that you have?
So the Summer Research Opportunity Fellowship is our main one. We're looking to grow that bigger, I think is where we're looking to put more money into. Right now, we usually support about 2 students a summer. We're looking to double that within the next 2 years. So not necessarily expanding to more programs, but expanding the one we already have.
Perfect. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to our second presenters. We have Nadia and Deborah, I believe. Perfect.
Good morning.
Good morning, afternoon.
Well, yeah, I did it while we were rehearsing. I was like, oh, good morning. And then I thought about it and it's like, no, it's only good morning to me. It is very early morning to me. But here
Appreciate
we
you
are.
joining us. All right. Perfect.
Well, should I go ahead and start?
Go ahead,
Perfect.
yes.
So, thank you for the last talk. And I wanted to also say that it's from the end of the last talk to ours is a good transition because what we're going to be talking about is increasing diversity within open and big team science and psychological sciences. So we are researchers from Latin America, and we're going to be talking about successes and challenges within 2 initiatives we started within the Psychological Science Accelerator and another consortium that we started that's called Abrir. What is our motivation? If there's a recent preprint by Aaron Buchanan and Lewis in 2023, where they look at who does big team science. And if you look at the figure, we can see that it's mostly high-income countries that are doing big team publications. Even within psychology, specifically the Psychological Science Accelerator, which is a big team science network that we all participate in, we can see that one of the groups that participates less or has less members is Latin America, and you can see this on the graph on the left. Spanish is the second native language that is most spoken by numbers of speakers, and most speakers are in Latin America. And despite this high prevalence of Spanish speakers, there is low representation of Latin American researchers as members, as you saw from the previous graph, but also as proposing authors. This limits the types of samples that we have, but also limits the types of topics or social problems that we investigate. So from within PSA and two initiatives were born. The first that was born was in 2022 was Abrir, Advancing Big Team and Open Reproducible Science Through Increased Representation, which cheekily we named Abrir, which means open in Spanish. And I would like to point out that this isn't just Latin American countries for Abrir. The founders are from India, from Bosnia, from Brazil, and from Mexico. So this is a worldwide consortium that we're trying to push forward. And within Psychological Science Accelerator, the PSA, we built two different regional hubs, and then one is within Latin America, and the other one is in Southeast Asia, all within 2022 and 2023. In 2022, with the help of a small SIPS grant, small but super helpful SIPS grant, we were able to organize an event to try to improve representation in big team science in collaboration with PSA and Fort. This was 3 days where we had hackathons, we had workshops, we had panels. And one of the things that we're going to talk about right now is the diagnostic questionnaire. So what is happening and why aren't people from Latin America joining? I would like to point out that this is a general questionnaire for people from low and middle income countries in general, or people that felt that were underrepresented in big team open science. And as we can see, there are lots of barriers, institutional, systemic, financial, personal, political, and geographical barriers. But the ones that most people report are institutional and systemic barriers. And we will especially look at systemic barriers here, but there are institutional barriers which, as in both organizations, we can't really affect, like lack of academic support within the universities in each of our countries, or lack of journal access, or having universities that are teaching-centric institutions. The ones that we will address more in this talk is clear and open procedures to join teams, a lack of academic mentorship, bias, lack of interest in region-specific topics, and lack of opportunities for researcher skill sets within low and middle-income countries, and lack of materials in native languages. How did we address some of these? We created these regional hubs, and specifically within Latin America, all materials are in Spanish, all sessions are in Spanish, and we specifically asked within the hub, what is it that you need? And within the Latin American regional hub, we had how to join, which addresses the first barrier, and how an introduction to SF. And we, with the permission and in collaboration with the Center for Open Science, we translated a bunch of the guidelines that they have online. I will not be talking about the South Asia Regional Hub, but check it out. They have wonderful journal clubs and talks pertinent to psychological sciences, and specifically big team and open science. So to address specifically two of those barriers, we had 2 meetings, and I'm going to let Deborah talk about these 2.
Okay. So we hosted 2 webinars in Spanish, specifically aimed at local scientists, with us the perspective of the barriers faced in Latin America, such as language, lack of educational resources, cultural representation, and sensitivity. As Brian Nosek said in the earlier talk, we customized these webinars for our audience. We, as Nadia said, we hosted 2 webinars. One was about the Psychological Science Accelerator, and the other was about the OSF platform, addressing specifically procedures on how to join, how to use a platform. Next. So we hosted these two live sessions. And they were live sessions, and then we recorded them. They were in Spanish. We translated and adapted the materials the OSF provided. Next. So researchers who attended the webinar were from all career levels, mostly from different institutions in Mexico and Argentina, mostly postgraduate students in red, but also undergrad students and researchers. In the first meeting, we presented the PSA, the Psychological Science Accelerator, what it is, how to participate. We encouraged people to participate. And we also collected information about research and project interest for the sake of future research proposals. In the second webinar, we presented an adapted version of the Center for Open Science educational materials on how to use the OSF platform. And 100% of participants in post surveys said that they would be using the OSF, they found it useful, they found that it made the quality of the science better. So, Nadia.
So with that said, what are our future plans? We plan to include researchers from more Latin American countries. Deborah is from Argentina and I'm from Mexico. So most of the pool that we had were from Mexican and our Argentine researchers. What are we trying to do? We seek to empower Latin American researchers to be leaders in big team science networks. So not only join networks like the Psychological Science Accelerator, but also propose papers, and hopefully the next first author in the next Psychological Science Accelerator paper is somebody from Latin America. It's our goal. And we will be continuing training about open science in Spanish. We just received a small grant within Abrir, where we will be translating many of these educational materials into not only Spanish, but Serbian, Bosnian, Nepali, Malaysian, and among other languages. So this isn't just within Latin America. As we saw, we still have lots of challenges and barriers. And so as a hub, as a PSA hub and as a Abrir, we can address some of these barriers, but also we need help from high-income country institutions. So what can you do, or other institutions or even funding agencies help us do is reduce systemic barriers like hidden curriculums, have more online sessions for conferences, investigate topics that are related to our regions, or put a little bit more interest in other things that may be important for our region specifically. Allow more leadership roles within these. I'd like to say that I took a leadership role within the Psychological Science Accelerator. And I would encourage more people from low and middle income countries, and specific from Latin America, to do that so that we can make more changes. I think another thing that is super important, what allows people to take the step to try to be in leadership roles, is to be represented. So please invite more researchers from low and middle income countries to present their research within these open science network meetings. I think we need to also adapt standards to be more representative of the world, to skill sets, to things that are important to the whole world. And I think more mentorship, and by more mentorship, I mean bi-directional mentorship. As a researcher from a low middle income country, we have things that we can also provide or bring to the table that could be helpful to advance psychological sciences. We would like to acknowledge our funding institutions, CONICET and CONACYT, and our universities, and of course, the Psychological Science Accelerator, SIPS for providing funding, and Abrir for being helpful within our initiatives as well. These are all of our email addresses and our socials. If you're interested in looking any of the panels or workshops or the webinars that are in, the panels and the workshops from Marid are in English, but all the webinars that we mentioned here are in Spanish, and they're in our YouTube channel. So that is it. And if anybody has any questions, we are here if we still have time.
Thanks very much. We'll go ahead and transition to the next presenter. And again, anyone in attendance, you can enter questions in the Q&A or in the chat, and we can address those at the end to the extent that we have time. I believe Michael is our next presenter. Ready?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, cool. Going through okay? Cool, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this session. My name is Michael Meyer. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a Mendenhall Fellow and Research Geographer at the U.S. Geological Survey, based in Madison, Wisconsin, which is located on the ancestral homelands of the Ho-Chunk peoples. And once again, I'm really excited to talk to you today about something near and dear to my heart. But before I get into the details, I know 2020 has been like 15 years ago, or feels like 15 years ago. So I want to do a quick year in review or few years in review. And it's been a hard few years. Things started with a global pandemic that took us out of communities that we had grown accustomed to living in and working in. And on top of that, folks like myself that were entering the job market was looking at an ever increasing economic and unemployment situation. And the COVID-19 pandemic, on top of this unemployment situation, also we also witnessed, quite frankly, racism, at least throughout the United States, that was only enhanced, if not exacerbated, by the economic and COVID-19 situations. So this is just setting the context for it's been a hard few years, but I do have hope. And I want to say that I think that this is a time, we're living in a time that's really ripe for the open science movement. And speaking at least from the environmental sciences, we live at a time where there is more environmental open science, open data than ever before. And these data are capable of addressing questions at unprecedented scales. And to get at some of these questions, we really need two things, right? We need the data to be available, and we need to have the skills to work with those data. Well, thankfully, the data are pretty plentiful. There's a suite of data repositories out there, as well as federal and national agencies. And even community science initiatives such as iNaturalist has allowed people to engage in this movement. And so that just leaves the skills. And the good news about a skill is that it can be learned. We can't just create new data, but we can help people develop skills. And so that's where these two communities that I'm involved in come from. The Aquatic Ecosystem Modeling Network Junior, or AMON-J, as well as the Community for Data Science and Open Science in the Aquatic Sciences, or DSOS. And so how did these communities start? It really started with my good friend Jake Zwart, who's a data scientist at USGS, and myself taking what would have been virtual or in-person events in data science and open science in limnology and oceanography, and making it a virtual format. And with the first year in 2020, we somehow managed to get over 530 registrants for this free virtual summit with about 20 talks. And we thought that this was pretty indicative of the community really wanting something that wasn't there. So we published what we learned in an open access LNO bulletin piece. But what we realized was that only showing people what you can do with these skills is only like half the battle. You have to show people how to actually do the skill so that they can apply it in their own research. And quite frankly, we knew that the event that we hosted was unremarkable with respect to diversity of presenters and speakers, and quite frankly, abysmal. And we knew that if we wanted to grow the diversity of the presenters, we had to grow the diversity of the team. And so today, this is the organizing community, the committee for DSOS and hacking limnology workshop events, all largely early career researchers from around the world. Our registrants, we host annual workshops and summits. Registrants come from over 60 countries on 6 continents. Here, the size and color of the country is translated to the number of registrants stemming from each country. And we also have archived all of the materials from each of the workshops in an open science framework archive, which includes now, after 4 years of summits, 40 hours of training material in remote sensing. So using Google Earth Engine, using cloud computing services, workflow management software, numerical modeling, machine learning, and also working with voluminous data, such as from the National Ecological Observatory Network and many data repositories. And I'm happy to announce that we will be having our 5th virtual summit and hacking limnology workshops scheduled for the week of the 15th through the 19th of July. These are 3 online events. So as the schedule gets filled out, you'll definitely be able to learn more. You can scan the QR code on the next few slides to at least get tracked to the website when registration opens. So how do we do it? I think there's 5 main things that we can distill our success to. We created opportunities for folks to feel comfortable. We highlight and promote early career researchers. We empower others with skills to participate. We create some central hubs, and we continuously reassess what we're doing the 1 through 4 to the best of our abilities. And this is really manifested in things like, because it's virtual, talks don't have to be in English. We provide real-time subtitles that are translated that we translate in advance for all of the recorded talks. And thanks to this, we're able to have talks that for example, in multiple talks in Portuguese, Persian, and French. We also created a Slack workspace that allows individuals to engage in non-English spaces. So currently we have, I think about over 10 language channels, each of which has a moderator that curates the channel to be sure that the content in the channel still upholds to the code and conduct of the code of conduct for the community. Highlighting early career researchers, we have a virtual job board that you can think of as like wearing a ribbon at a conference that says, I'm looking for a job or I'm hiring someone for a job. This is just a low overhead, low effort initiative that really helps early career researchers network with potential employers, both in academia, government, and industry. Okay, so the workshops I think are really our bread and butter. These are live coding, especially intermediate skill level workshops. We assume that you already know a coding language, and we address those sort of intermediate to advanced skills. But each day has an introductory talk that can be watched before the day of the workshop to get caught up to speed with what will be covered, a keynote talk to highlight what's possible with this skill set, and a 2-hour hands-on coding workshop where folks ideally leave with a product or at least a skeleton script that they can adapt for their own work. And then each day also includes with a brainstorming hour where people swap ideas about how they can take the skills from the workshop and ultimately expand and grow the community. I already touched on this briefly, but thanks to OSF, we were able to create a central archive that's ultimately citable. And I'm happy to report that many of the talks used within this OSF archive is starting to be used by environmental data science classes, at least across the United States, to create a central training hub where especially graduate schools can have like foundation, graduate students can have a starting foundation. And then just continuously reassessing how we're doing it. Are we creating a diverse space? Are we reaching out to underrepresented communities? Are we creating opportunities for engagement? And I think like the main thing that we harp on is what are the things that we can change overnight? And we literally have changed many things literally overnight, as well as what can we change in the long term, like those 3 to 5 year time steps. And happy to talk about that in the Q&A. So getting back to that big picture idea, how it's hard to be a person, let alone a scientist in these days, I draw a lot of hope from the fact that in open science is inherently about building community, especially considering that community was something that many of us lost at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think we, especially DSOS and A1J, have had success building communities that likely depended on creating these comfortable, inclusive spaces, highlighting ECRs, empowering others with skills, and then also archiving and just understanding how we've been doing, taking the temperature on how we've been doing. And lastly, you saw a bunch of names on the first title slide. It would not be possible without a great team of members helping pull this off. We're entirely grassroots and unfunded. This is a volunteer effort, and it's really thanks to everyone's willingness to contribute and, quite frankly, our flexible funding, funding for our time. And lastly, these are tough times, but I'm confident that open science and community building can help build a path forward. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Michael. Yeah, that really resonates with me that this whole movement is about building community. And it's one of the things that's so exciting about bringing the different presenters in this session together, all on the theme of community and all approaching it from slightly different directions.
Thank you.
We will have our next presenter, Jennifer. You here?
Yes. Hello. Stephanie Jarmack and I are delighted to be with you today to talk about user engagement in the NASA Science Explorer, or SciEx, Open Science Initiative. We are project scientists representing the disciplines of planetary science and astrophysics in building a new open digital information system that unifies all of NASA science. It is based on the highly successful astrophysics data system that has served astrophysics for 30 years. NASA SciEx is an open literature-based digital information system. It covers planetary science, astrophysics, heliophysics, earth science, and NASA-funded research in the biological and physical sciences. It provides transparency in how scientific data are created, collected, analyzed, and distributed, while encouraging the reuse of data and software and methodologies across multiple disciplines. We launched this free service in December 2023 at the American Geophysical Union meeting. For each discipline, we aggregate research products, usually in the form of publications, connect them, index them, and provide them, expose them to researchers. We start with the core journals for a particular discipline and pull all those papers in. Then we work outward through the lesser known journals and the non-refereed literature using a network of references and citations. So if a paper in that core collection references a paper outside of it, we pull it in. If it's cited by a paper that's outside that collection, we pull it in. Then we look at those papers we've pulled in and their references and citations and begin to expand the system in that way. For a user to find papers within this system, we are developing discipline-specific user interfaces that they can select for their field and then use keywords and search terms, acronyms that are familiar to them, the language of their science. We also are building discipline-specific search and analysis tools that are all available through the appropriate interface, but whichever interface a user selects, then they still search the entire multidisciplinary corpus. Once they have found a record or paper that interests them, we link not only to the publisher's version of record, but to all the open access versions, to data sets, to software, and other information that places that research within its overall ecosystem. So with NASA SciX, you can search the current and historic scientific literature via topic, via object, via an author's name or ORCID, or via an organization that was involved with that work. You can ask for papers using a set of fields and operators that we provide, and you can build very precise requests, or you can use built-in functions that make it very easy to find papers similar to one that you're looking at, to find papers that are trending in a discipline, or papers that are useful to a group of people working on a topic, or papers that provide an overview of a subject. If you find a paper that is interesting to you, then that is a jumping off point for deeper exploration. You can read the open access version. You can look at the papers that have cited that work. You can review the references that the authors themselves used. You can find similar papers. You can reuse the software. You can reuse the data. You can evaluate how that paper is influencing its field by looking at citation and readership statistics. Also, SciX has a powerful set of visualization tools for any set of papers within it, so that you can look at how it is cited or read. You can see the networks of collaborators that are writing these papers, that are citing it or reading them. You can see the concepts and explore them as a word cloud or a network among the concepts. And you can see how those papers are changing, their influence is changing over time. Is their citation rate or readership rate growing? But most importantly, NASA SciX is being developed in the open for scientists by scientists. And we encourage everyone to become involved with us in creating an open, innovative, trustworthy digital library that enables multidisciplinary research and exploration. Now, Stephanie Jarmak will talk to you about how you can join us in advancing 21st century science through this adventure.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Stephanie Jarmak. I'm the SciX project scientist for planetary science. And so for this second half of the talk, I'm going to talk mostly about how we're building this community around SciX, the ways we're supporting this expanded user base, identifying the communities that we need to bring this very useful resource to, in our ambassador program, which is really core to building that community up. And then I have a last slide that describes some ways that you all as individuals in your communities could get involved. Next slide, please. So we're supporting an expanded user base. So as Jennifer had mentioned, this NASA Science Explorer is coming as an expansion from the astrophysics data system, the ADS. And that was debuted in April 1993. So when I was 2, and the astronomy community grew up with that system, like every astronomer uses it. And so we're balancing the needs of these distinct communities. Part of Jennifer's job as the astrophysics project scientist is to keep all of those astronomers happy. And part of my job is to, bridge that gap and make sure that everybody is happy too. But the astronomers know that, science is growing into this interdisciplinary connected field. And so this expansion really helps improve all of science through open science. And we're working with these communities through user studies, and we're planning some focus groups. And I'm working with the technical team as well to enhance our relevance algorithm to really be able to bring the most relevant content to our users while maintaining that discoverability of these interdisciplinary connections. And we're also in the process of hiring a project scientist for Earth Science, who is going to help us better connect with that community and identify their unique needs as well. So we're working to develop these discipline-specific UI enhancements and feature enhancements as well. One of those for the planetary science community that we recently rolled out with SciX is being able to tag records with named planetary features. So we are using named entity recognition, machine learning technique to be able to pull out specific references to named planetary features. So users can search on those specific terms. And we're expanding that as well to be relevant for each of our expansion communities and identifying specific named missions or repositories, just to be able to pull in as relevant information as possible for those communities. Next slide, please. And this slide is just on our current approach to reach out to those communities. So we debuted the beta of SciEx at a major interdisciplinary meeting, the American Geophysical Union. And we have planned, many planned presentations tailored to specific communities, like the NASA Planetary Assessment and Analysis Group meetings on the Planetary Data System. We're connecting with the Earth Science Informatics partners. We're talking with some liaisons from the biological and physical sciences community and have found out about the American Society for Gravitational Space Research, which is apparently a very popular meeting for those communities. So, most of the team is coming from an astrophysics astronomy background. So we're really in a learning process right now and reaching out to members of communities outside of that scope so we can best support the expansion. And part of that is identifying those liaisons and community outreach professionals who know how to do that sort of connecting of networks. And including connecting to more discipline agnostic networks like the Transform to Open Science, the SCOPE project, which is the NASA SMD Community of Practice for Education, and the Science Activation communities, all of which do amazing outreach work. And so we're trying to sort of build on that instead of reinventing the wheel there. And part of that also, we joined the Center for Scientific Collaboration and Community Engagement. So utilizing some of those open community engagement resources that are available in part to inform some of our champion programs, the ambassador program. And if you want to connect us with your community, we'd love to hear from you. So we're really open to getting any emails about that. I would love to connect with all of you. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the ambassador program. We're currently advertising for selecting our lead ambassadors. So this will be a cohort of around 12 ambassadors across the various disciplines that we're expanding to support, and including astrophysics as well. Targeting mainly early career researchers and underrepresented groups to create as diverse a cohort as possible. And this is going to be really foundational for building out our more general ambassador program and online community, so we can engage these networks and get this continual feedback to both advertise and educate to these communities, but also hear from them about what their specific needs are, so we can address those as, improving the content of our holdings or certain features as they arise. So we're engaging this network of networks to build this interdisciplinary community around SciEx. Next slide, please. So here's some ways that individuals can get involved. So as I said, a lot of us are from the astrophysics or astronomy planetary communities. So we're always looking for ways to improve semantics from new disciplines. So just users going to the website, trying to find the content that they're used to finding on whatever resources they had been using previously, and letting us know how we match up. Is there something that you're not finding that you would like to find that's within the scope of the project, of course. And also just reaching out if you have a community that you'd like for us to give a tailored presentation to, or put some information on a newsletter. We'd love to hear from you. And one of the distinguishing factors of this platform is that we link to the data and software. So if you have certain curated bibliographies, or you notice a repository that's relevant is missing, please reach out to us and we'd love to coordinate on that. And we're also at this forefront of machine learning and AI. So if you have certain natural language processing problems that would benefit from such an amazing multidisciplinary corpus, or have certain labeled data sets that we could collaborate with, please reach out to us. Next slide, please. So yeah, I just want to thank all of you for listening to our presentation. I put Jennifer and my contact information there, and please check out the website. Thanks.
Thanks very much. This was really, really interesting. I have so many questions. I think I'm probably going to have to schedule a follow-up. I think I'll ask a more general question to the panelists overall, and that will be our final question before we depart for the next session. We arranged this session to bring together different community groups that are working to spread and foster open science across different disciplinary backgrounds. And so I was wondering if, now that we've seen this sort of variety of presentations here, if there are lessons learned or things that you would like to share with each other that you think, might be beneficial for these other communities to adopt. I mean, it strikes me that there's a lot of similarities in the efforts that are going on, but also, some potential new learnings that could be shared between the groups. So I'll open the floor to any of the presenters who want to offer their insights.
I was particularly impressed with the learning community that Michael Meyer has fostered, and think that we should be looking through their materials and investigating further how we can use that to support new users coming in to use our resources.
Thank you. I'll yes and that. I think one thing that I think I've learned is just like if you build it, they will come. Like so many people are so hungry for all of these things or all of these resources and materials that all the presenters have talked about. And like, I think it's not something, a lot of these resources are not something that's naturally necessarily like built into curricula for advanced training. And at the same time, for people that are doing the advanced trainings, right, like faculty and even industry and government sectors, the trainings, it's hard to like add new things without removing something else. So having these resources that allow people to independently gain the skills and experience the science or this space is like a really great way to bridge what is being done with like where things are heading. So yeah, just like if you build it, they will come type thing.
That's excellent. Anyone else like to contribute? If not, then I will say thank you to all of the presenters. Certainly a lot of really valuable initiatives going on, incorporating training, community building, inclusion efforts, all sorts of different things. It's really super valuable, and we really appreciate your work. Enjoy the rest of the sessions, and we'll see you in the next one.